Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro Tour Talk with Steve Dodge. I'm Steve Dodge, and we are changing our format. Just want to give you all a quick heads up about what we're going to do going forward tonight and going forward. So first of all, thank you very much for watching the live broadcast of the podcast via YouTube and for having such great, insightful conversations and questions for me. You can always ask questions for us, dgpt.com/AMA, and we will answer any and everything. You can also posit questions to us via Facebook, or I don't know if you can do it on Instagram or not, but you can get questions to us a variety of ways, but dgpt.com/AMA is the best way. That's the site we'll be checking out each week, and those are the questions we'll be answering on the podcast going forward. And then if you send us a Facebook message and it's a great question, we'll do that too. But going forward, we are not going to have this live YouTube podcast. Number one, I've never been quite happy with the audio. Number two, whenever we do the pre-interview, which was a lot of fun with Kevin Jones last week, we put a little slideshow over it and all that jazz. But the audio just wasn't quite up to snuff. And so, especially when I was trying to type quietly as it was going on, the dog walked by a couple of times. So we're going to go ahead and shift it over to an entirely audio podcast. And we'll show you how to go get it in just a minute. We will continue to do interviews with players and TDs and movers and shakers and all that kind of stuff. And the interviews are going to focus on two things. Number one, what kind of things do you like? How much fun do you have when you're out there? And what was the most fun or the funniest thing that happened while you've been out on tour? And then number two, we'd love to hear an opinion from you about something that you would do to help push the sport forward. Something that you would do differently if you were in specifically my shoes. So those are the two focuses. Foci. Those are the two foci that we're going to have for the new podcast. And then, so that's two things. And then the third thing is our first podcast has actually already been released under this new format and is now available. And I'm going to pull up my phone and let's see if I can show this to you. All right, so here's my phone. You got it? Wow, you can't see that at all. But anyway, so when I pull up my podcast app, you can see right here, Pro Tour Talk with Steve Dodge right next to Planet Money. We click that. And our current episode, Pro Tour Talk 24 with Rebecca Cox, is up and ready. So please feel free to listen to that. And if you like it, go ahead and subscribe and give us a rating. Couldn't hurt for our podcast to start getting some real love. So we're going to focus on the audio portion of the podcast. We're going to get rid of this YouTube interaction with all of you. It has been a lot of fun. Before I leave, I will go ahead and check to see if there are any questions real quick. Lastly, I'll go ahead and say, not lastly, but on the podcast this week, we talk with Rebecca Cox. We obviously go over the power rankings. We have two great AMA questions. The first is, does Paul play better when Ricky's not there? Get some pretty interesting answers to that question. And then the second AMA question is, what's it going to take to be in the Tour Championship? We break that into two parts. So listen closely. And then the third part is a conversation with Rebecca Cox. And Rebecca has some really good thoughts on feature cards and the way feature cards should be done. And I love hearing this kind of input and feedback. It's just going to make the whole thing better and stronger. So thank you to Rebecca Cox for sharing her opinions and stories from the tour. And then we close it out with the podcast of the week, which I've already given you a sneak peek of. So if you can remember, you know what the podcast of the week is going to be. And and lastly, going forward, we're going to use this Wednesday night at 8 o'clock session to communicate directly with our Patreons, specifically our $10 and up Patreons. So we'll have a nice small group and we can have a really good conversation. I'm going to challenge anybody and everybody out there who is a $10 and up Patreon. Bring on the questions. Try to make me uncomfortable to ask something. Let's see if there's something I have absolutely never thought of that you have thought of and you think, hey, I think this is a great idea. So we're going to use that as a great platform for back and forth with our Patreons. And that's actually going to start at 8:30 tonight. So if you want to go sign up for Patreon right now and get invited to that, I will invite you in about 20 minutes. So patreon.com/DGPT. But otherwise, please go listen to the podcast, rate it, subscribe, give me some feedback. Let me know what you think and how you'd like us to tweak it. And thank you all very much for being a part of the origination of this podcast. It's been really fun. We've got a great team. And as the team continues to grow, I'm going to continue to branch out and try to figure out things that the Pro Tour can do to engage with our fans. And this is one of those things. So looking up real quick. Oh, what's the name of the podcast? Great question, George. It's called Pro Tour Talk with Steve Dodge. I'm pretty sure about that. Let me pull it up again. Yeah, there it is. Can you see that? Let me see if you can see that. Yeah, Pro Tour Talk with Steve Dodge. And that was a great question. And probably a really good question and a good way to finish this. So thank you all for watching. I look forward to the next time I talk with any of you anywhere. DGPT.com/AMA is the perfect way to get a question out to us, and we will answer it on the podcast. And if you want to be a part of this conversation going forward through the YouTube Google Hangout thing, just become a Patreon, patreon.com/DGPT. That's it. Thank you all. Carver G, you don't need to download an app. If you've ever listened to a podcast, we're just one of those. And actually, great question, Carver G. Any podcast app at all, iTunes, Stitcher. I use the Google Music, Google Play app to get my podcasts. And but you can also just go to our website. Go to dgpt.com, and then I think it's /podcasts.html. I would double check that this moment. dgpt.com, and then you click on the news feed at the top, and then one of the tabs underneath news says podcast. Yeah, so it's dgpt.com/podcast.html, or just dgpt.com and then click news and then click podcast. Perfect. That is it. Thank you, George. I'm glad you got it. Carver, if you have trouble downloading the app, shoot me an email. I'm sure we can figure it out. My email is steven@dgpt.com. I look forward to seeing you all out on the tour. If we're ever in your area, please come watch. Good night, everybody. Did I hit the button? Oh, maybe not.